John's eyes opened slowly, his head heavy as if he had been sleeping for days. The first thing he felt was the cold metal floor beneath his body. A strange, soft blue glow filled the room, coming from the walls that seemed alive. The air had a sweet floral scent, but not like anything from Earth. It was sharper, almost electric. He blinked several times, trying to clear his vision. When his sight finally adjusted, he froze. Someone was lying beside him. It was a young woman. No, not a woman. Something else entirely. Her skin had a faint silver shimmer under the light, and her long, dark hair floated slightly as if moved by an invisible breeze. Her eyes were large, glowing faintly, like two polished gems. She stared at him without blinking. And for a moment, John forgot how to breathe. He tried to sit up, but something heavy pulled on his wrist. Looking down, he saw a strange metallic band attached to him. It was connected by a thin glowing cable to another band on her wrist. His eyes widened. What is this?" he asked, his voice hoarse. She didn't answer at first, only tilted her head slightly, studying him as if he were a rare creature. Then she spoke, her voice calm but carrying a strange echo. "It means we are connected, John's." Mind raced. Connected? What did that even mean? He looked around the room. No windows, only smooth metallic walls with faint symbols etched into them. The only door was shut, and it looked like it was carved from solid metal. He could hear a distant hum, like the heartbeat of a machine. "Where am I?" he asked. She smiled faintly, but it wasn't a warm smile. "You are somewhere far from your home," she said. "Somewhere you cannot leave without me." John felt a chill crawl down his spine. "Why am I here?" he demanded. Her gaze didn't waver. "Because you are the only one who can help me. Or destroy me." He didn't know whether to believe her. Her calm tone made him uneasy, as if she already knew every decision he was going to make. He pulled at the band on his wrist, but the cable glowed brighter, and a sudden sharp pain shot through his arm. She didn't even flinch. "I wouldn't do that," she said softly. "If you try to break it, we both suffer." John's breathing grew faster. This wasn't a dream, it was real. He had no memory of how he got here. The last thing he remembered was walking home from work late at night. Then, a flash of light, a loud sound, and nothing. He studied her again. She was undeniably beautiful, too beautiful, in a way that didn't feel natural. Her movements were slow, graceful, as if every gesture had meaning. And yet, there was something dangerous in her stillness. "What's your name?" he asked cautiously. She looked away for a moment, as if deciding whether to answer. "Leora," she finally said. It was a strange name, but it fit her somehow. Leora stood up without warning, pulling John to his feet as the cable between them tightened. He stumbled forward, catching himself before falling. She moved towards the door, placing her hand on a glowing panel beside it. The symbols shifted under her touch. But the door didn't open. Instead, a low, warning sound filled the room. She withdrew her hand, her expression unreadable. "They know I'm awake now," she murmured. John frowned. "Who knows?" She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to him, her silver eyes locking with his. "If you want to survive, you must trust me," she said. "No matter what you see, no matter what I do." John didn't like the sound of that, but before he could respond, the room shook violently. A deep metallic roar echoed from somewhere beyond the door. The blue glow of the walls flickered, casting strange shadows across Leora's face. She looked worried, and that scared John more than anything. "What was that?" he asked. Leora's gaze shifted towards the door, her jaw tightening. "They're coming," she said simply. "Who's coming?" he demanded. Her eyes softened for the delay. "First time, the ones who want you dead." The humming sound in the walls grew louder, and the floor vibrated beneath their feet. Somewhere in the distance, heavy footsteps echoed, slow and deliberate. John's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't know where he was, who she truly was, or why they were connected. But one thing was certain. Whatever was outside that door was getting closer. And Leora wasn't planning to let him face it alone. Asterisk. The heavy footsteps outside the door grew louder, each one sending a faint vibration through the floor. John's muscles tensed, ready to run. Though there was nowhere to go, Leora stayed perfectly still, her head tilted as if she was listening to something beyond human hearing. Then she whispered, "Stay close," her voice low but urgent. The door didn't open right away. Instead, a thin beam of red light scanned across the room from floor to ceiling. John instinctively stepped back, but the glowing cable between their wrists pulled him forward. The red beam paused on him for a fraction of a second, making the band on his wrist heat up. Leora's eyes narrowed, and she quickly moved to stand. In front of him, blocking the scan, the light vanished, replaced by silence. Then the sound of the footsteps began to fade, moving away. John let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "What was that?" he asked. "Security check," she replied without looking at him. "They know you're here now." Her calmness bothered him. It wasn't the calm of someone in danger. It was the calm of someone in control. He glanced again at the cable. Between them, glowing faintly like a living thread. "Why are we connected?" he asked again. Leora's lips curved into a faint smile. "Because if one of us dies, the other dies too." John's mind reeled. "That's insane," he muttered. "Not insane," she said softly. "Necessary," before he could demand an explanation. The room shifted. The walls began to move, folding into themselves, creating an opening where there had been solid metal seconds ago. A corridor stretched ahead, dimly lit and lined with strange, fluid-like panels that seemed to ripple when he looked at them too long. Leora tugged gently on the cable, and John followed reluctantly. The corridor curved sharply, and every few steps he caught faint echoes, whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves. It was as if the ship was alive and aware of their presence. John shivered. They reached a junction where two paths branched off. Leora didn't hesitate, taking the left one. "How do you know where we're going?" he asked suspiciously. "I don't," she lied, her voice too quick. He caught the flicker in her eyes, and he knew she did know. She just wasn't telling him. After several minutes, they reached a small chamber. The walls here were different, covered in intricate symbols glowing in shifting colors. In the center was a pedestal with a floating sphere of light. John stepped toward it without thinking, drawn to its warmth. But before he could touch it, Leora's hand shot out, gripping his arm tightly. "Don't," she warned. "It will burn away more than your skin." Her grip was stronger than he expected, almost painful. John pulled back. "Then what is it?" Her gaze softened. "A memory vault," she said quietly. "It records every moment that happens here, and it never forgets." John frowned. That meant this thing could have recorded everything since he woke up. Maybe even how he got here. But before he could speak, Leora turned sharply. From somewhere deep within the ship came a low, resonant sound, like a horn. Her expression darkened. "We need to move," she said. They left the chamber quickly. John's mind raced. The strange cable, the scanning beam, the memory vault. The lies she was telling him, and yet, something inside him whispered that breaking free from her would be a mistake, that the danger outside was worse than whatever she was hiding. As they moved deeper into the ship, the temperature dropped. John's breath turned to mist, and the walls took on a faint frost-like pattern. It was silent here, too silent. Then, a soft clicking sound echoed in the darkness ahead. Leora stopped, her entire body tensing. Her voice was barely a whisper. "They found us again." The clicking sound grew louder, echoing in the cold corridor like the ticking of a giant clock. John's instincts screamed at him to run, but Leora stayed perfectly still. Her eyes flicked toward the ceiling, and for the first time, John noticed faint shapes moving above them in the shadows. They clung to the metal like insects, their limbs long and thin, their heads turning unnaturally fast. One of the creatures dropped silently to the floor ahead of them. Its body shimmered faintly, making it blend with the surroundings. John's stomach turned. He could still see the faint outline of its sharp claws and a mouth full of needle-like teeth. The glowing cable between them pulsed rapidly, and John felt a strange heat travel up his arm. Leora didn't seem surprised. "They've locked onto your scent," she whispered. "We have seconds." Without warning, she pulled him into a sprint. The creature hissed, its sound vibrating in John's bones. From the walls ahead, two more dropped down, blocking their path. Leora raised her hand, and a thin, curved blade of light extended from her palm. A weapon John had no idea she was hiding. In one swift motion, she slashed at the nearest creature, and it vanished in a burst of shimmering particles. But the others didn't back away. They closed in from all sides. John's heart pounded. This isn't an escape, it's suicide. He shouted. Leora didn't answer. She spun, dragging him toward a small hatch in the wall. The hatch's surface rippled like liquid as she pressed her hand against it. It opened just enough for them to squeeze through. John crawled in first, the narrow tunnel forcing him to move on hands and knees. Leora followed close behind, sealing the hatch as the creature screeched outside. The tunnel sloped downward, the temperature rising with each step. The hum of the ship grew louder until it felt like the air itself was vibrating. Ahead, the tunnel widened into a massive chamber, and John froze. Rows upon rows of transparent pods lined the walls, each one holding a figure suspended in glowing liquid. Humans, dozens of them, their eyes closed, their bodies still. "What is this?" John whispered. Leora's expression was unreadable. "A holding vault," she said. "They're alive, but not free." John stepped closer to one of the pods, pressing his hand against the cold surface. The man inside looked peaceful, almost as if sleeping. But something about his stillness felt wrong. "Why didn't you tell me this?" John demanded. Leora's gaze locked on him, her voice cold. "Because if you knew everything, you might not help me escape." Her words cut deeper than he expected. The cable between them pulsed again, and for a split second, John saw a flash in his mind. Earth burning, ships blotting out the sky, and Leora standing in the middle of it, her eyes glowing brighter than the flames. Before he could speak, a deafening alarm blared. The pods began to shift, sliding deeper into the walls as heavy metal shutters closed. Over them, from the far side of the chamber, a massive door began to open. Leora's grip on his wrist tightened. "They know we're here," she said. "And now, there's no going back." Asterisk. The massive door at the far side of the chamber continued to rise. A cold mist spilled out from the darkness beyond it, crawling across the floor like a living thing. John's grip tightened on the cable between them, his instincts screaming that whatever was behind that door wasn't human. Leora's eyes stayed locked on the opening, her face unreadable. From the shadows emerged a tall figure clad in black armor, its surface shifting like smoke over steel. It carried no weapon, yet its presence felt heavier than any blade. When it spoke, the voice was deep, layered with an unnatural echo. "Commander Leora." "You've gone too far." John froze. "Commander?" he repeated, looking at her in disbelief. Leora's jaw tightened, but she didn't look at him. The armored figure stepped closer, its gaze turning to John. "And you've brought the human," it said slowly, as if tasting the word. "The one from the prophecy." John's stomach dropped. "What prophecy?" he asked. Neither of them answered. Instead, Leora stepped forward, placing herself between John and the armored figure. "He is mine," she said sharply. "And you will not touch him." The figure tilted its head. "You speak as if you care," it said, "but we both know why you need him. The artifact will only respond to a human's touch." John felt like the floor had been pulled from under him. "Artifact? Is that why I'm here?" he demanded. Leora finally turned to face him. Her eyes glowed faintly, and for the first time, there was no hint of a smile on her lips. "Yes," she admitted. "That is why you were taken." The armored figure moved closer, the mist curling around its legs like it obeyed its will. "You're wasting time," it said to Leora. "The Council already knows you've betrayed them. John's thoughts spun. Betrayal, counsel, prophecy, none of it made sense. Betrayed who? And why would you save me if I'm just a tool? He asked, his voice shaking. Leora stepped toward him, closing the distance until he could see the faint, shimmering patterns on her skin. Because, she said softly, if they get the artifact, your planet dies first. Her words landed like a physical blow. Images from the visions he'd seen earlier flashed in his mind. Earth burning, alien ships blotting out the sun. The armored figure laughed, a sound like grinding metal. You think you can stop the war, Leora? You're just delaying it. Without warning, the figure moved. Faster than John's eyes could follow, it reached for him. But the cable between him and Leora flared with blinding light, forcing it to recoil. The room shook as if the ship itself had reacted. Leora grabbed his wrist, pulling him toward a narrow side passage that had appeared in the wall. Move! She shouted as they ran. John's thoughts were a wind. He wasn't sure if Leora was his savior or his captor. But one thing was clear. He was no longer just a random human caught in an alien game. He was the key to something far bigger, and now every side wanted him. The narrow passage twisted sharply, forcing John to stumble as Leora pulled him forward. The walls pulsed faintly, as if reacting to their movement. Behind them, the heavy footsteps of the armored figure echoed, followed by the faint clicking of those insect-like hunters they'd seen before. They were gaining. Leora glanced back only once before pulling a small black device from the folds of her clothing. She pressed it against the wall, and the metal rippled like water before solidifying. Again, the sound of pursuit dulled slightly, but John knew it wouldn't hold them for long. What was that? He asked, gasping for breath. Delay, she replied. Not safety. They kept running. The corridor suddenly widened into a sloped platform leading downward. The floor was slick, coated in a faint layer of shimmering liquid. Leora slid down effortlessly, but when John tried to follow, his feet slipped out from under him. The cable between them went taut, yanking her back a step. She caught herself against the wall, her eyes flashing with irritation. You're slower than I thought, she muttered. John bit back a retort, but before he could speak, a stabbing pain shot through his wrist where the cable connected. It spread up his arm and into his chest, making his vision blur. He staggered, gasping. What's happening to me? He choked out. Leora's expression tightened. The bond, she said. We've been linked too long. Your body isn't ready for it. The pain faded as quickly as it came, leaving John dizzy. He didn't have time to recover before they burst into a massive open chamber. The ceiling was so high it vanished into darkness. Suspended above them were dozens of mechanical platforms, moving silently in complex patterns. Each one was connected to others by thin bridges of light. Far below was nothing but a bottomless pit. We have to cross, Leora said. John stared at the shifting platforms. You're insane, he said. She stepped onto the first one without hesitation. The cable pulled at him, forcing him to follow. The platform moved the moment his foot touched it, gliding smoothly toward the center of the chamber. Halfway across, the sound of pursuit returned. Figures emerged from the far side, the insect-like hunters, and behind them, the black armored figure. The hunters leapt across the moving platforms like predators chasing prey. Leora drew her blade of light, slashing at one that landed too close. John tried to keep his balance as the platform jerked and shifted beneath them. The pit yawned below, its darkness swallowing the sound of falling debris. One hunter lunged at John, its claws inches from his face. The cable between him and Leora flared again, sending a shockwave that knocked the creature back. But the flare left John's vision swimming, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Leora grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the next platform. You can't black out now, she said sharply. If you go down, I go down. They jumped to the final platform, the cable burning hot between them. Ahead was a narrow exit, glowing faintly. As they neared it, the armored figure leapt, impossibly far, landing just behind them. Its voice was a low growl. "You can't outrun fate, human." Leora shoved John through the exit, sealing the doorway behind them, but even as they caught their breath in the dimly lit corridor beyond, John knew it wasn't over. The bond was killing him slowly, and the enemy would not stop until they had him, dead or alive. The corridor beyond. The sealed door was narrow and dim. The walls were lined with strange crystal veins that pulsed faintly, each heartbeat like throb sending a soft hum through the air. John's breathing was still uneven, his chest heavy from the chase. Leora moved ahead quickly, not looking back. It was as if she already knew where they were going. Finally, the corridor opened into a wide circular room. At the center was a tall, black column covered in spiraling symbols that glowed a dull gold. Suspended above it was a sphere of shifting light, almost like the sun trapped in glass. John felt an odd pull toward it, as if it was calling to him. "What is that?" he asked quietly. Leora stepped to the edge of the column, her eyes fixed on the sphere. "That," she said, "is the key of Arender." The name meant nothing to him, but the way she spoke it, like it was sacred, made him uneasy. "It looks alive," he murmured. "It is," she replied, "and it will only awaken for human hands." John took a step back, his instincts screaming this was a trap. "You brought me here just for this?" he asked. Leora's gaze softened, but there was no denial. "Yes," she said simply. "Without you, the key stays dormant, and the war begins." He shook his head. "You keep talking about war, but you haven't told me who's fighting, or why I should care." Her expression darkened. "If the Council gains the key, they will unleash a weapon that can erase entire planets in seconds." She said, "Earth will be first, not because they fear you, but because they want to make an example of you." Her words hit him harder than he expected. The images from his earlier visions returned. Earth burning, cities crumbling under alien fire. But something still didn't add up. "And what about you?" he asked. "What happens if you get the key?" For the first time, Leora hesitated. She didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, "If I get it, I can end the war before it starts, but the Council will hunt me until my last breath." John stared at the shifting sphere, its light dancing across his face. His gut told him touching it would change everything. But he also remembered the pods, rows of humans frozen in glowing liquid, and Leora's cold admission that she hadn't told him everything. "What if you're lying?" he asked quietly, her eyes locked on his. "Then you'll doom your planet by refusing me," she said, without hesitation. The hum in the room deepened, the crystals in the walls glowing brighter. Somewhere far above, John heard the faint echo of alarms. The enemy was closing in again. Leora extended her hand toward him. "You have to choose now," she said firmly. "Take the key, or walk away and watch your world burn." John's heart pounded. He didn't know if she was his savior or his executioner, but he knew the moment he touched that sphere, there would be no turning back. The air in the chamber grew heavier. The sphere above the black column pulsed faster, its golden light casting sharp shadows across the walls. John stood frozen, Leora's outstretched hand inches from his own. The cable between them glowed brighter. With each passing second, the heat from it almost burning his skin. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. If he took the key, he could stop the war or start one. If he refused, Earth might burn. Every instinct told him there was more to Leora's story than she had told him. Above them, the sound of metal tearing echoed through the walls. The armored figure's voice carried into the chamber. "It doesn't matter what you choose, human. The key will be ours." Leora's jaw tightened. "They're here," she said. "Decide now." John took a step toward the column. The sphere's light grew warmer, almost comforting. For a moment, the visions in his mind softened. Earth was still burning. But now he saw something else. Leora standing alone, holding the key, surrounded by bodies, human and alien alike. Her face was unreadable, and he realized then that no matter what choice he made, someone would die. He reached out, his hand brushing the surface of the sphere. It was warm, too warm, and the moment he touched it, the cable between them blazed with white light. Leora gasped, dropping to her knees as if the bond was pulling something from her. The armored figure stepped into the chamber, just as the sphere's light began to pour into John's body. But instead of handing the key to Leora, John turned to face both of them. "I'm not giving it to either of you," he said, his voice steady. The golden light in his hands flared, and before either of them could move, he slammed the sphere back into the column, but twisted it. The chamber shook violently, the symbols on the walls flaring with blinding brightness. Leora's eyes widened in shock. "What have you done?" she shouted. John's voice was almost a whisper. "I changed the lock." The sphere's light vanished into the walls. The hum of the ship turned into a deep, resonant tone that echoed for miles. Somewhere far away, systems shut down, weapons powered off, and the ship's engines went silent. The armored figure staggered, its body glitching like broken glass before it dissolved into mist. Leora stared at John, her breathing unsteady. "You've made yourself the only one who can ever use the key," she said, her voice low. "They'll hunt you until the stars themselves go dark." John met her gaze. "Then I guess you'll have to decide if you're my ally or my jailer." The chamber lights dimmed, the hum fading into silence. Far in the distance, the sound of hundreds of footsteps began to grow. John knew their escape wasn't over. It had only just begun.